So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a default dict. So a default dict is a dictionary that defaults to a certain data type's default value. So I'm going to say user UID to events, or actually call SID. They call this SID, fine. SID to events. It's always hard to name variables. So the key here is an SID, and the value is a list of events with SID. So we're going to default this a default dict of type list, which means now each element here is in this dictionary starts off with a default empty list value, and I can just append to it. So now what I can do here is I can say SID to events rec SID append rec. So what this should do, if it works right, is take the SID field out of rec, which is such as reg user 01206. It will find that element in the dictionary. If it exists, it will append the whole record to it. If it doesn't exist, it actually just starts with an empty list. So you don't have to actually check for exceptions here, which is really nice. So as a sanity check, again, a good habit is to write only a line or two and then just rerun it. So I'm going to rerun python parse.py, and it runs. Okay, nothing gets output, but that's fine. There's no exception. So now at the end, I'm going to print the size of SID2 events. So this should be 498. Oh, no, it's 10. Okay. Oh, okay. That's right. It's 10 because there's not 498 different user IDs. There's only perhaps 10. So let's iterate over. This is, we'll say for K. These are all the keys. So these are all the users. Okay, so in my small sample data set, there were 10 users, and these are their usernames. And now I want to actually see what their what the lists are. So I'll say LST equals SID to events. Okay, I'm going to look up the value. Remember, the value is the list of events with SID. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to print the length of list. So for every key here, I want to print out the length of the list that's its value, just to see how many events there are for each. So I'm going to run it again. Okay, so there were 10 total. That's this one, 10 total SIDs. This user had 35 events, had 4, had 1, had 1, 3, 1, 1. So this one had a lot, this one had a lot also. Good, so this looks like it's sane. So to do a real sanity check, what I want to do is I want to make sure these values all add up to the total I was expecting, which was what, 498, right? So one thing we could do as a sanity check is we could say n rex equals 0, and then n rex plus equals 1. So now I want to print n rex at the very end. I'm not going to print this anymore. I want to make sure it's 498, right? As a sanity check. Good, 498. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take SID to events values. I'm going to take all the values out, and then I'm going to do a sum. I'm going to actually add up all of their lengths. So each value is a list. I'm just going to pass it into len e and to get its length out. And this is what's called a generator expression. So this actually produces one value at a time. It doesn't actually create an intermediate list. So it's pretty efficient. And sum just adds up all the numbers. So let's see. It's also 498. Great, which is what I expected, because remember that all of these values should up to 498. So since this is sane, I'm just going to make an assert here just to make sure it's always true. So this assertion is a nice sanity check to make sure that my code makes sense. Okay, good. So I have an assertion here to protect it. Let's move this assertion up just to protect as a guard. Now let's actually get back to the parsing. So recall I put the print statement back in. Okay, so there's 35, 4, 1, 1, 169, so forth. Okay, so now the next thing I want to do is, recall these are unsorted, right? I want to actually sort these by the timestamp field. So let me actually just print stuff out more explicitly. So I'm going to add an extra print statement, which will put a gap here. And now instead of printing the length of the list, well, we'll print it also. We'll actually go in the list and then print E. We'll put a space or two in front just to make it look nice. So recall I'm going to, for every key in SID to events, I'm going to print the length of the list, which is value, then iterate through it and go inside the list and print it. So there's a lot of stuff here. It's not going to all fit on my screen because this person has a lot of events. But I just want to give you a general sense of what the data looks like. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to, oh, here we go. So let's say this user, a non-user 028149, they only had 3 events, and each event is a dict. Notice how there's 3 of them, and there's a timestamp in it. There's an event, which is the event type, and then the SID. And you better hope the SID matches this one, which is another nice assertion to have. So we could check this assertion if we want as well. Okay, so the thing we want to do is we want to sort by timestamp. So what we can do is we can sort this list directly. So list.sort will sort the list. But what we actually want to do is we want to pass in a key function. So the key function is a anonymous function, a lambda, that takes an argument and grabs the thing we want to sort by, the key we want to sort by. So we actually want to sort by timestamp. So we're actually going to have this return e timestamp. And the reason why this works is because notice how the timestamp is actually a string. But this works because this string is in kind of a lexicographic order. So notice how if we actually sort alphabetically by the strings, the dates will actually be chronological because the most significant parts are first. The year's first, followed by month, followed by day, followed by hour, minute, second. So all we have to do is just do a string sort. This is nice because we don't need to actually convert it to a date object. So it's actually very efficient. So we're going to call this list sort, which actually sorts it in place. And then after we sort it in place, we're going to print it out again. So if I run it, lo and behold, these things should all be sorted, but this is really noisy. So let's actually just print the timestamp part out. So we'll print e timestamp because we don't want to print all the other stuff. And I just want to eyeball to make sure it's sorted. So let's run parse again. If you notice here, even though I have a lot of events here, let's say this person has 25 events, notice how they're all sorted now. They're all chronologically sorted, which is great. This is exactly what I want, right? It's chronologically sorted, 9, 10, 11, 12, great. And if let's just say for contrast, let's just not sort it and see if it makes sure it's out of order. So another good practice is just to comment out code and see what's different. So I'm going to comment out the sort, so now it should not be sorted. So now notice these numbers are all messed up. There's 1126, 1207. Actually, these are kind of sorted. Yeah, 1207, 1208. Yeah, there's like 1208 here, then 1126, which comes before, and then a 1207, and then a 1229. So these are a bit out of order.